All right, it is here. It is my favorite day of the week because this is a day where we talk about the big pop culture stories that are happening right now. That means talking about comedian Ilana Glazer's new movie. It's called Babes, that is out. Also, Lizzo was name dropped in South Park. The group chat is here. There's a lot to get into. Let's go. I'm Elamin Abdul Mahmoud. This is Commotion. Okay, let me tell you what Babes is about. Babes is about two friends navigating pregnancy, motherhood, and their friendship under very different circumstances. Michelle Buteau's character is a dentist who lives on the Upper West Side of New York with her husband and her young kids. And then Ilana Glazer. Well, Ilana Glazer plays an Ilana Glazer-like character. She plays a yoga teacher getting ready to be a single mom. I want to play you a bit of the trailer.
I've had sex, but I was on my period. So you can't get pregnant on your period.
Girl,
Stop.
Girl, you stop. We went to the same school. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I have your back no matter what.
You think I can do this, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Rolling Stone called this movie the bridesmaids of baby making. Jen Sookfong Lee and Sarah-Tai Black are here. They're here to talk about this. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Well, hi.
Hi.
Great. Hi.
Hi. I'm ready to get into this movie. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I'm going to give the first word to you, Jen. This movie explores how absurd and funny pregnancy can be. Did it resonate in any kind of way?
Well, as someone who's been pregnant, yes, like the physical part of it, yes, like the squirting breast milk and like the physical weird medical procedures and the way your body becomes like its own like sentient creature that you didn't realize it could become. And I think like they did that really well, but I also thought the human interaction level was even better. Like the kinds of people when you're pregnant that you come into contact with that you would normally never meet. Like, listen,
you don't encounter those people otherwise.
No, and I mean, like, I actually did do an interview process with a bunch of doulas, and it was super weird. And, you know, one of them said she had read all my books, and I was like, there's only two, but cool. And like, it was weird. And it's like a totally unknown world, and I thought that was pretty well done. So, I mean, I liked it. I like the pregnancy part. Let me put it that way.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. We should say, listen, Ilana Glazer first got famous for a gorgeous and rambunctious and feminist comedy called Broad City. She stars, and she also co-wrote this movie. She spoke with Tom Power on Q about this movie recently, but why she wanted to make a pregnancy comedy. Listen to this.
I've heard this about Broad City too, that like my work educates, and I'm like, you know, that's pretty sad. That's pretty pathetic. But we were surprised. It was funny. It was so funny and uncovered this material, this story from this perspective. And then, you know, among these like very funny points, the thing that made us be like, is the loss at this time. You know, you expect the gain and you're going to gain a baby and it's going to be wild. But the loss of your identity, your time, your space, your bodily autonomy, and your friendships.
The loss of your space and your bodily autonomy and your friendships. Sarah-Tai, how do you feel about the way those ideas played out in the movie?
I mean, I love all those ideas. I feel like the twin narratives of this film are like what happens when your body is not yours and the expectations of motherhood on people with uteruses and especially on women. And on the other hand, like what it means to negotiate what family means. But the thing for me was, as someone for whom those two narratives would be really impactful, I just wish it was more built out. Like here, it was really vibes. You know, we spend a lot of time on like little goofs and gags. And like Jen said, I love the physical comedy of pregnancy. I think it's like, if you make anything surrounding motherhood a bit ugly, I think you're getting closer to the truth of it. And also like probably being very funny. But there just wasn't enough time like actually building out these characters in a more complex way beyond the comedy, especially when it came down to like the central conflict of like our whole lives we've been together and I always thought you'd be there for me. I always thought we'd be family. Like that is a really needed narrative. Like that is very much timely for, you know, those of us 30s and 40 somethings who are kind of negotiating what it means to live in the world and maybe not be part of that nuclear family dynamic, but still have folks we consider to be family. So I just wish it was better written. I wish it was better acted. I'm disappointed, as a mother would say, because I really wanted it to be good. You know, I really wanted them to marinate in these themes in a more substantial way. And it felt really like a dramatic arc from Broad City. But the difference is here, like, it's a feature film, and it's not enough to spread across that time.
Right. The ideas that Sarah-Tai is getting at there, Jen, I'm interested in those ideas in a movie in general. The idea that Ilana Glazer would want to take them on, that sounds compelling. You know, did they work for you in this movie?
I think parts of it did. I think the biggest part of like postpartum depression for people who've given birth is really the loss of your old self, your old life. If you were somebody who spent a lot of time building a life, building, you know, a chosen family, building all those things, the loss of that is really acute. And I think I spent a lot of time like curled up in the fetal position crying, like I wish I was cute again, or like whatever it was that you're crying about. And that I thought was well done. I certainly felt that. The old life is really impossible to get back. And I think, you know, close friendships is part of that. So that was good. But I did also feel like, as somebody who has a very like tight group of friends, I have 4 sisters, like I didn't lose my friendships, partly because when you have a baby, you actually need people more than ever, like truly more than ever. And it doesn't matter if they're good with children. It doesn't matter. If they're willing to fold your laundry and bring you a basket of muffins, you're going to keep that person till the end of time. So that to me was a little strange. Like I never felt like I wanted to get rid of anyone or could.
I have heard from mother-parent friends that what happens is actually the opposite. A lot of single friends kind of abandon you in the lurch because your lifestyles are so different.
Now, like, I'm interested in the way that these ideas end up being addressed in a movie, because in a movie mechanic or movie structure, Sarah-Tai, because it's one thing to sort of play with these themes of loneliness, of abandonment, of, hey, I thought we'd have each other forever. I thought that this family would just sort of persist through time. But then this is a major sort of disruption to this. But this is also a comedy, Sarah-Tai. This is also a movie that is supposed to make you laugh. And I'm interested in the thing that you said about the gags and the sort of silly laugh moments, because I listen, I have relatively low standards. I laugh at everything. And I didn't find this movie that funny. Like I was kind of watching this movie waiting for the laughs to come. And I like liking things. I like this as a part of my personality. And this movie didn't work for me, partly because the pace of the gags was so constant, and yet not all of them were that great. And in doing so, you take the momentum out of the emotional arc that you're trying to drive home. Well, at least like that was my reading of this. And then I read your Global Mail review of the movie, and you're like, actually, like not only that, but the gags themselves felt like sort of like millennial cringe. So do you want to talk a little bit about like the style of gags in this movie? Yeah,
I mean, I was a fan of Broad City in a way that kind of gives me secondhand embarrassment now in some ways. Like, don't get me wrong. It was great in a lot of ways. Sure. But like, listen, I am Black, guys. I am Black. Any Black person listening right now who watched Broad City, you know what I'm talking about, okay? There's a lot going on in that show that maybe shouldn't have gone on. Yeah. And also, you know, I'm no stranger to being a corny ass. So I'm really not one to judge when it comes to like millennial cringe type stuff. I'm like, sure, label me, whatever. I am who I am. Yeah. But here, it's really glaring. And I think like for me to feel that feeling, it's kind of like when you're boiling a crab and you put it in the warm water and you're like, oh, this is all right. This is all right. And then suddenly I'm like, where is this going? What is this? Like it felt like that, you know. It's a lot of those Glazerisms that made Broad City what it was, for better and for worse. But I think the thing for me is like after almost a decade from a decade, let's say, a decade from the original show, a year from the premiere of the original show, you would hope to see some comedic growth in terms of her writing. But we're still kind of stuck in this Yas Queen era, although thankfully she doesn't say Yas Queen. I think Ilana very much got the memo about Yas Queen, but it's still in that wheelhouse. And you know, like you said, it's not like you're not going to laugh, like things are funny. It's just that feeling of like, you know, when a person thinks they're so funny and they keep doing the same bit over and over and over, and they take the air out of the room, you know what I mean? It's like, give us something different, change it up, let us breathe a little, you know, we want to laugh. God damn, look at the world right now. We want to laugh. Please make me laugh. And the fact that like, all the ingredients here should add up to something that makes us really heartily laugh along. It wasn't a failure in that sense.
I was surprised by how dated the comedy felt like to me within like maybe a couple of big scenes. Within a couple of big scenes, I was like, got it, I can sort of expect some of those, as you call, Glazerisms, and it will continue to be this, which I don't know. Again, as someone who likes to like things, all I want to do is show up and go like, hey, give me something I can like. I'm on board already. Jen, I want to ask you a little bit about some of the conversations that people are having about parenthood, because the broader conversation among millennials right now is like, hey, can I afford to have children? Is this even possible for me financially? This movie does not get into that. We kind of just go, okay, Ilana Glazer's character is gonna be a parent. Let's go. Can she afford it? No. Let's never ask this question. Does that feel like a missed opportunity to you?
Oh my God, yeah. She's like a yoga teacher who
Cheers.
teaches yoga classes in her apartment. Like, in what world does that person have enough money to have a baby by herself? That doesn't make any sense to me. But like, I think that in like, for people who are about 10 years younger than me, and this is something I've discussed with a lot of my friends who are, in their 30s, that like, there's nobody can afford to own a home. Nobody can afford to give children the kind of childhood that we imagine for children, that we think children need or want. And also the world is terrible. What world are we leaving to our children? So I think that anxiety is so, it's so ripe for like mining for comedy. There's so much there that Ilana Glazer could have mined for laughs. And, like I always say, every good joke has undercurrent of sadness and depression. So like, why aren't we examining that? That could be hilarious, I felt. And it was a totally missed opportunity.
Okay, we are going to leave it there when it comes to that conversation. It sounds like you're like, watch Babes if you must, but if not, you take it or leave it. We're going to leave it there because I want to talk about something else that happened this week. And that it's been a bit of a sleepy week in pop culture when one of the most provocative conversations this week is about South Park. Okay, so South Park released a TV special called The End of Obesity. It is sort of South Park's attempt at getting at all this conversation about weight loss drugs like Ozempic. Here's a scene from that show.
There's these new medications that can treat obesity, but my mom can't afford them. I'm just a poor, fat kid.
Poor little fat kid. Okay, Cartman, if your doctor wants to put you on medication, your insurance will pay for it.
No, they said the insurance won't pay for it because, they're kind of new drugs, and so the only people that can get them are people who can pay $1,200 a month, and the rest of us get this.
What's this?
It's a prescription for Lizzo. Rich people get Ozempic, poor people get body positivity.
Sarah-Tai, that is an interaction with Cartman, the Cartman main character of South Park. His weight has been a long-running joke as long as the show has existed. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Cartman in general and how they treat him in this episode?
Yeah, I do want to say I didn't have in the year 2024 watching a South Park episode on my bingo card, but here we are.
We thank you for your service. We thank you for your service.
Rehashing old traumas from my youth. But,
yeah.
Where does one begin with Cartman? Chapter 1, he was born, he's a quintessential South Park character. He's the resident fat character. He also happens to be like super manipulative, super scheming, sometimes psychopathic, very anti-Semitic, racist, all of those political incorrect isms that make him lovable to fans of the show. Very much not the moral compass of the show, very intentionally so. He's definitely one of the most favorite, most beloved. As a fat kid in the 90s, Cartman was also unfortunately very influential in how a lot of us fat kids were viewed. I would say, reinforcing a lot of stereotypes of fat people in terms of like supposed moral failings. So yeah, it's this is funny. I will say, like, classic South Park, like, it's funny, but it's bad. It's funny, but it's bad. It's always going to be.
What happens in this episode? Like, how does he get treated in this episode, in this sort of special?
It's very interesting because it's almost a sincere approach to, like, patterning the experience or witnessing the experience of what it means to try to access these drugs. But at the same time, like, the gag here is that Cartman thinks that if he can finally lose weight, if he can finally be skinny, he can finally be horrible and judge everyone else. But of course the gag is he already is horrible,
Right.
It's very much him having this epiphany that, newsflash, you can be an asshole at any size. While at the same time, like, throwing in these gags about, like, the superficial nature of, like, chasing down, like, the ideal aesthetic form, while also, like, having, like, this trenchant bit of commentary on like the state of healthcare. It really is classic South Park, in as much as like, if political incorrectness is very funny to you, this is obviously going to be for you, but there's always going to be that little thread of smart satire in there too, if you can stand to watch for that long.
I like Jen shaking her head as you're like, yep, that's classic South Park. I mean, it genuinely is shocking to be talking about South Park in 2024, but they did it. They created a little conversation. Jen, how do you feel about the special? Did it work for you? Did it fall short? What are your feelings?
Well, I did laugh because I did laugh. There were moments I laughed, and actually that clip, I felt a little teary just way back here because it was so, I didn't expect to feel emotional. I already watched it, but like I felt emotional about it. So there were moments of like emotional sincerity that was like surprising to me. I would say I liked some of it. I think that, but this thing about South Park, right, is that they're always going to make fun. So for example, like the moms in it with their abs and their crop tops who are like robbing stores for the Ozempic. That's funny. That's funny. Listen,
do you want to tell people about that scene? Because I think it's a useful scene to tell people about.
Which one? There were so many scenes of the moms in the crop tops.
Yeah. So like, just describe this group of moms. Yeah.
So in this particular like South Park, special, there are moms who basically get addicted to injecting Ozempic because it makes them skinny, and they have like washboard abs, and they're always walking around in crop tops and like low riding, pants. But then it's very difficult for them to get Ozempic because they don't have health conditions that would require it. So they start like stealing it from pharmacies, like robbing actually the South Park kids who weirdly are making Ozempic. It doesn't matter, but that's what they do. And they have like guns and like masks and stuff, and yet you can still see their abs. Yeah. So that part is like funny. And listen, I'm a mom who lives in a neighborhood where there are in an urban neighborhood, and there are some sexy moms who look a certain way. And like, so I am not one of these women, but like I see them at the gym terrorizing other people. And that seems like it's real. But then the one thing is, what I wish South Park could have done, like a little nod, is like, why do these women feel like they have to be this way? Why do they feel like they have to take the Ozempic? I'm not saying it has to be serious. It could also be a joke. Yeah. But like the question, but then, that's a rabbit hole of like patriarchy and misogyny. And is South Park going to go there? No. But
no, I don't trust South Park to particularly handle that particular rabbit hole. They don't have a good history of that, but they do have a good history of tackling a lot of other isms. I think in the way that you said, Sarah-Tai, which is, hey, if you're looking for a laugh that is like kind of racist and sexist and anti-Semitic, sometimes you will find those very easily. But should you be able to track the thread of smart satire, then like the show is much more rewarding. It's always the question about South Park is like, who's watching and what are they getting out of it? Has always been kind of the question about the show. Sarah-Tai, as we heard in that clip earlier, Lizzo's music is supposed to be in the show, like a prescription for people who can't afford the weight loss drugs. Lizzo recorded a reaction TikTok to that moment, and I can't play it on the radio because there's a little bit of cursing in it. But she seemed pretty unbothered by all of it. She said, quote, "I really showed the world how to love yourself and not give an F word." What did you make of South Park's use of Lizzo and also like her response to that?
Yeah, I think it's like the classic South Park way where it's something good coupled with something bad. You could never really take a full sincere thing away from it, a full well-developed critique away from it without also like giving into like the irony of the joke and the themes overall. On the one hand, it's riffing on body positivity in this really interesting way. I love that moment when one of the doctors is like, "I'm afraid you'll have to be on Lizzo for the rest of your life." Because like, ciao. The journey of loving oneself is lifelong. But I think that Lizzo's response is very diplomatic in terms of she's choosing the path of least resistance for herself in terms of not wanting to fully offer herself up to the trolls, especially the South Park trolls. Yeah. But still wanting to acknowledge it and try to lean into like the positives of the whole thing. On the other hand, of course, like this episode is, as always, reinforcing these false stereotypes about fat people and fat bodies, that we don't exercise, that we don't seek out joyful movement practices. that we have low standards for ourselves, for the people we allow in our lives, that, you know, we've given up on caring for ourselves, and that's what body positivity or fat positivity or neutrality is. You know, that we're gorging ourselves 24/7 on food in this like compulsive, almost obscene way, like we're in some kind of freaking deleted scene from Caligula, you know? And I don't think it's on Lizzo to call this out. And Lord knows she already faces so much online already for kind of unintentionally being the face of not just body fat positivity, but like a fat Black woman's body and the expectation that you won't love yourself. But I still would have loved to see some sort of acknowledgement of those shittier aspects, some kind of like tongue-in-cheek kind of little call out, like something fun that wouldn't take a lot of emotional labor from her, but still would like offer her audiences like a I know this is crappy too kind of vibe, you know, something lightly humorous but still critical.
Her desire to sort of resolutely maintain the posture was a little like, I don't know if this was the moment for it, Lizzo. I think you could have gotten a little mad and people would have backed you up on this. Jen, we should say like this special is arriving in an interesting moment because we are having these wider conversations about these weight loss drugs. Some of those conversations are being had because of Oprah. Oprah is very intent on us making a wider conversation about these because she's already done at least 2 specials on this. And then the TikTok said it wants to, quote, be a place that encourages self-esteem. So they're going to limit the content that is about weight loss drugs. How are you making sense of all these messages we're getting about our bodies, about these drugs right now?
I really hate that we're discussing our bodies in this manner at all. Like it actually really enrages me. Like I was a child in the 80s and my sisters were teenagers, and the number of Jane Fonda VHS workout tapes that we had in our house and the discussion we had about being skinny, about not eating something or eating something, it actually is like I have PTSD from this stuff, right? Like it's actually really upsetting to me. And so, you know, it doesn't matter to me why people are talking about women's bodies or people's bodies in this way. What matters to me is that we shouldn't be talking about people's bodies in this way, period, right? Like, you know, there were years there where I felt really like optimistic about the way people were talking about weight and like size and like the diversity of like all humans. And then Ozempic became this like silver bullet that, you know, people could get skinny real fast. And then all of that seemed to like evaporate. And that to me is the most shockingly terrible part of all of this. And it doesn't matter to me if TikTok bans anything. What difference is that going to make at the end of the day? Like it makes no difference to me. What matters is that I think people need to, people need to stop. That's all I want to say about that. That discussion upsets me so much.
That's fair. Sarah-Tai, let me give you a minute on this, on the collision of all these forces from South Park to Oprah.
I mean, frankly, as like a person who is not just very fat now, but as a person who was very fat in the 90s as a kid, like the fact that I'm still here talking about Oprah and South Park, like, am I not owed some reparations? Like, can they not take their foot off our neck, you know?
Yeah.
So like on the one hand, at least for kids, I'm glad there are some steps being taken by like media organizations, companies like TikTok in terms of like trying to disrupt those diet culture messages that kids are being bombarded with nonstop because, you know, Jen and I are having war flashbacks, clearly. So it obviously is like a great step to try to stop normalizing the pursuit of thinness, the expectation that we all want to be thin. But I think what's happening now with the rise of Ozempic and other kind of weight loss, quote unquote, medications is like fatness is becoming no longer just a moral failing, which is a supposed quote unquote choice in and of itself, but it really becomes more of a radical choice to remain fat, you know, like when I'm at Shoppers picking up all my prescriptions because I'm unwell, you know, and I see that prescription fridge stacked high with Ozempic, and I know in my brain of brains that like this is not all for people with chronic health problems. This is for people who are chasing aesthetics, chasing thinness, and causing a drug shortage by doing so. It's giving like, and still I remain, and still I remain. It feels almost like a radical choice now to remain fat. It's always been politicized to be fat, but it feels even more so now in this climate where the expectation is no longer like, don't be fat, but now you can choose to quote unquote not be fat.
I think that is a perfect and thoughtful and reflective place to leave it. I appreciate your time. Sarah-Tai Black, Jen Sookfong Lee, thank you for being here. Thank you for this journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, my pleasure. Sarah-Tai Black is a film critic based in Toronto. Jen Sookfong Lee is an editor and author of books like Superfan and Good Mom on Paper. You can listen to Tom Power's interview with Babes star and co-writer Ilana Glazer on Q's podcast right now. And that is it for the show today. Listen, my name is Elamin Abdulmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. It's been a good week. I want you to go back and listen to our conversation that we had about the future of the box office, because that was a really thoughtful conversation. Bill Gaibiri was there. Christy Puchko was there. It was a Wednesday podcast. I want you to listen to it and then drop me some comments on our Instagram if you don't mind. My name is Elamin, and I'll see you next week.